related, they are mainly responsible for the accommodation of the lens. Accommodation of the lens means, you see, when we try to see something, when we try to focus on something, then what we do, we can, that focusing is basically done by changing the shape of the lens. Okay, that means the muscles that are present in a ciliary body, if they contract, then what will happen? The lens will get extended or it will get somewhat flattened. Okay, and if these muscles, they are in a relaxed position, then the lens will be somewhat, it will be convex type. Okay, and that convex lens to some extent can be made flattened by contraction of the ciliary muscle. Okay, and because of this contraction of the ciliary muscles that are present in the ciliary body, okay, the shape of the lens changes, and that in turn helps in focusing on an object. Okay, so that's why that movement of the lens or focusing of the lens, so that is called as the accommodation of the lens. That means the muscles which are the intrinsic muscles that are present in the ciliary body, they help in accommodation of the lens. That means they help in changing the shape of the lens, thereby they help in focusing on a particular object. Okay, whereas the muscles that are found in the iris, they regulate the pupillary diameter. So pupil, I think all of you know, it is the gap between the iris, that is the narrow opening. Now if you see in this lower image, the image of the palpebral muscles, so there you can see the eyelids, then you can see the eyeball. Okay, at the center of the eyeball you can see that black spot. That black spot, at the center of that black spot, again you can see one lighter area. Okay, that lighter area is the pupil. Okay, so pupil is the gap between the narrow opening of the iris. It is called as the pupil. Okay, so that pupillar diameter actually can be changed. That means the muscles that are present in the iris, we call them as the dilator muscles and also as the constrictor muscles. If the constrictor muscles of the iris, if they contract, okay, then what will happen? The diameter of the pupil will enlarge. As a result, more amount of light will enter into the eye. Okay, if the pupillar muscles, if the muscles of the iris, they dilate, then what happens? Then what will happen is that the pupillar diameter will get narrowed. As a result, less amount of light will enter into the eye. Okay, so in darkness, usually the muscles of the iris, they will contract. As a result, the pupillar diameter will increase and more amount of light can enter into the eye. As a result, you can see. Okay, so the intrinsic muscles of the eye, they are mainly responsible for the accommodation of the lens and regulating the pupillar diameter. Okay, accommodation of the lens is basically done by the ciliary muscles, and regulation of pupillary diameter is mainly done by the muscles of the iris. Whereas the third group of muscles, those are called as the extrinsic muscles of the eye. Otherwise, they are also called as the bulbar muscles, or they are also called as the ocular muscles. Okay, so these extrinsic muscles of the eyeball, they are mainly responsible for movement of the eyeball. That means if you keep your head in a fixed position and if you try to look around, you can easily rotate or move your eyeball, isn't it? You can, keeping your head fixed, you can look up, you can look down, you can look to your right, to your left, isn't it? So that movement of the eyeball, it is carried out by a group of muscles which we call them as the extrinsic muscles. Okay, so here in this image, you can see the various extrinsic muscles. Okay, so the main purpose of the extrinsic muscle is what? To move the eyeball. To move the eyeball, there are a group of muscles called as the extrinsic muscles. Okay, and one of the characteristic of this extrinsic muscle is that they all originate from the orbit. That means they will have their origin in their orbit and their insertion will be on the sclera. I hope all of you understand the difference between origin and insertion of a muscle. Do you remember the difference? Please respond. Hello. You know the origin and insertion difference or not? Which is movable, the origin or the insertion? Tell me someone. Insertion is movable, isn't it? That means you see the muscle will have 2 points of attachment. Okay, let us assume like your elbow joint. You can flex your elbow joint. That means you can bring your elbow joint, the angle of the elbow joint can be narrowed down, or you can extend your elbow joint. Isn't it? Elbow joint is the joint between the humerus and radius and ulna. That means there will be some muscles which will have attachment on the lower part of the humerus and another attachment on the upper part of the radius and ulna. When this muscle contract, then what happens? The radius and ulna is pulled towards the humerus. That means the point of attachment of that particular muscle on the radius and ulna will be called as the point of insertion, because while in the movement of the elbow joint, which bone is moving? The radius and ulna is moving, isn't it? Whereas the humerus remains fixed. As a result, the muscle which is extending between the humerus and the radius and ulna. So for that muscle, the attachment point on the radius and ulna will be called as the point of insertion, because the radius and ulna is movable, isn't it? Similarly, for these extrinsic muscles, you see they will all have their origin in the orbit. That means all these muscles will arise from the wall of the orbit. They will have their origin on the wall of the orbit, and they will insert where? They will insert on the sclera. As a result, sclera is the part of the eyeball. As a result, when this muscle, extrinsic muscle, contracts or relax, then what happens is that the eyeball will be moving. Okay, that's why the point of insertion is the sclera for these muscles, the extrinsic muscles. Okay, now you see, before I go into all the detail of the muscles, I would like first to discuss about briefly about the orbit. Okay, you see, all of us know the orbit or the orbital cavity is the cavity where the eyeball is lodged. Okay, so the orbit is a cone-shaped cavity on the lateral surface of the skull where the eyeball will be lodged in live animal. So the orbit is leveled here. So this cavity here, this is the orbit. So this orbit, if you see, it is posteriorly continuous with the temporal fossa. If you remember, this area is the temporal fossa. So it is posteriorly continuous with the temporal fossa and also with the pterygopalatine fossa. Okay, so pterygopalatine fossa is this area. You see, I have leveled here. So this area is the pterygopalatine fossa. You see, maxillary hiatus is here, just behind the maxillary hiatus, lateral to the posterior nair. So this area is called as the pterygopalatine fossa. And this cavity that you see here, so this is the orbital cavity that you can see from the ventral aspect. Okay, the orbital cavity from the ventral aspect is this one. On the side of the orbital cavity, here you have the pterygopalatine fossa. So the cone-shaped orbit, it is continuous posteriorly with the temporal fossa, and medially you can say is continuous with the pterygopalatine fossa. Now the external margin of this orbital cavity, it is called as the orbital rim. And this orbital rim, in case of cattle, it is complete. But in case of dog and pig, if you see, this orbital rim will be incomplete posteriorly. That means you see here, the upper one skull that you see here, this is the skull of dog, and the lower left one, this is the skull of pig. Now, if you see the skull of dog and pig, you can see on the posterior margin, you see the cursor. Okay, so here you see this bony orbital rim is incomplete. Okay, and in live animal, this part which is incomplete will be filled by one ligament, and that ligament will be called as orbital ligament. Okay, so that is a very common question that has been asked in exam, like in which species the orbital rim is incomplete. Okay, then you have to write, mostly in case of domesticated animal, you have to write, that is in case of dog and pig, the orbital rim is incomplete. Otherwise, questions may be asked like, in which animal you find orbital ligament? Then you will have to write, it is in case of dog and pig. And why you find orbital ligament? Because the orbital rim is incomplete in these two species. Okay. Now, you see, this orbit itself will be covered by a layer of connective tissue which is derived from the periosteum of the orbit. Okay, and that layer of connective tissue covering the orbital cavity, it is called as periorbita. Okay, questions may be asked like, what is periorbita? So periorbita is a layer of connective tissue derived from the periosteum of the orbit, which encapsulates the eyeball and its accessory structures. Okay, now if you see in this picture, here this image that you see here, so this is the image of the cranial cavity and the orbit. Here the frontal bone, that is the roof of the cranial cavity, and the brain has been removed. Okay, first you try to understand. What you see here, this is the left eyeball with the different muscles, glands, and blood vessels and nerve. Okay, the yellow color structure that you see here, these all indicates nerve, various nerves are there. Okay, then this blue color structure that you see here, this is a vein. Okay, and this red one, these are all muscle. What you see here, this is a gland. Okay, so this gland, this is the lacrimal gland. Okay, so all this structure, where do you find? You find them inside the orbit. Okay, so remember, inside the orbit, it is not only the eyeball. In addition to the eyeball, there will be muscles, there will be nerve, there will be vessels, that is blood vessel, lymphatic vessels will be there. There will be fat, and there will be fascia. Okay, and all these accessory structures of the eyeball. Accessory structures of the eyeball includes the muscle, nerve, vessels, fat, and fascia. So these are all accessory structures of the eyeball. That is, the eyeball and its accessory structures, they will be covered by a layer of connective tissue derived from the periosteum of the orbit. And that layer of connective tissue is called as what? Periorbita. So periorbita is a layer of connective tissue. Okay, so on this left side, you can see here, this is the periorbita. You can see these two hooks. Through these two hooks, the periorbita has been reflected. Okay, and these are the eye and its accessory structure. Whereas on the right side eye, the eye has not been dissected. So you can see here, you can see the gland. Okay, lacrimal gland, then you can see some muscles here, then one cartilage, and this yellow color structure that you see here, so that indicates the fat, that is the orbital fat, that is accessory structure. Now, if you dissect this fat, okay, then only, or if you remove this fat, then only you can see the muscles and vessels. And on the lower part here, if you see, this is the cranial cavity, this one. This is the cranial cavity where the brain has been removed, and on the left side, the dura mater has also been removed. Okay, but on this side, you have the dura mater. Okay, now this yellow structure that you see here, these are all cranial nerves. Okay, now this long structure that you see here, so this is a part of the spinal accessory nerve. Okay, and here you will have, this is the, actually the, what you say, the jugular foramen. Okay, through which the 9th, 10th, and 11th cranial nerve will come out. Okay, so this is the origin of the 12th cranial nerve, hypoglossal nerve. Okay, so here, these are the 7th and 8th cranial nerve, the facial and the auditory nerve. Okay, above that, this is internal acoustic meatus. Then you will have the foramen foramen orbitorotendum, through which the trigeminal nerve, the abducens nerve, and many other nerves will be going out. If you go forward here, this is the optic nerve, optic chiasma. Okay, so this is this yellow color structure that you see here. This is the optic nerve. That is the left optic nerve going and supply the eyeball. So here you have the optic foramen. In front of that, you see these two depressions. These are the ethmoidal fossa. Okay, you can see this sieve-like bone here. So this is the cribriform plate of the ethmoid. Okay, so this will be the crista galli, cribriform plate of the ethmoid. These are the ethmoidal fossa. Okay, so here just I wanted to tell you about the periorbita, which is the connective tissue derived from the periosteum, and within this periorbita you will have the eyeball and its accessory structures. Okay, now before I I would like to discuss about the dry skull here, the foramen mainly, because I told you all the extrinsic muscles of the eyeball, they will have their origin from the wall of the orbit, isn't it? That's why we have to know what are the different structures that we find in their orbit. Okay, so if you put the skull in somewhat slanting position this way, then you can find you can see the various structures, mainly associated, the structures that are associated with the eyeball. Okay, the accessory structures of the eyeball you can find here. So to locate the various structures, first we have to locate the pterygoid crest. So what you see here, this is the pterygoid crest. Okay, behind the pterygoid crest, you will have foramen ovale. In front of that, you will have foramen orbitorotendum. In front of orbitorotendum, you will have optic foramen. And in front of optic foramen, you will have ethmoidal foramen. Okay, and here you can see this area. So this area is called as lacrimal fossa. Okay, now the base of the lacrimal fossa will have one foramen which will lead to one canal which will go and open into the nasal cavity, and that canal will be called as the nasolacrimal canal. So the posterior opening of the nasolacrimal canal is located at the base of the lacrimal fossa. Okay, for today's class actually, you have to remember the position of these three structures, the optic foramen, the ethmoidal foramen, and the lacrimal fossa, because these extrinsic muscles of the eyeball, they will arise either from around the optic foramen or from around the ethmoidal foramen or from around the lacrimal fossa. Okay, that's why these three are very important for today's class. Okay, because you see there are total 7 numbers of extrinsic muscles of the eyeball. Out of that 7, 5 of them will arise around the optic foramen. 1 of them will arise from around near the ethmoidal foramen, and 1 will arise near the lacrimal foramen. Okay, so try to remember their position in relation to the orbit. Okay, so that's why I am showing this slide here. Okay, now coming to the extrinsic muscles of the eyeball. So these extrinsic muscles of the eyeball, they are also called as ocular muscles, or they are also called as bulbar muscles. Okay, and these muscles, they are total 7 in number. Okay, try to remember their number. There are total 7 numbers of ocular or bulbar muscles. Okay, and these 7 muscles, they are enclosed within the superficial and deep fascia of the eyeball. Now, most of these muscles, that means not all the 7, but most of the muscles, they are flat band-like. Okay, most of the muscles are flat band-like. So if you see, these are orbital muscles. Okay, ocular muscles. So they are all flat band-like, and each muscles have a muscular part and a aponeurotic part. The muscular part is the red one. So this red one is the muscular part, and the aponeurotic part is this white one. So if you see this muscle, so this muscle, it is flat band-like, then it has a muscular part and a aponeurotic part. So the muscular part is usually towards the point of origin, whereas the aponeurotic part is towards the point of insertion. That means this band-like muscle before inserting will become white aponeurotic or white sheet-like to form an aponeurosis with the sclera. I hope you understand the meaning of aponeurosis. Yes or no?
No, sir.
No? You see, the muscle, when they insert, before inserting the muscles, they can insert in 2 forms. They can form a band-like structure and they can insert on the bone. That is called as tendinous insertion. Tendon, have you seen tendon?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So tendons are band-like connective tissue layers. Okay. So that means each muscle, muscles may insert in 2 forms. They may insert by forming tendon, or they may insert by forming aponeurosis. Tendon and aponeurosis both are made up of fibrous connective tissue. That means both are made up of collagen fibers. Okay, and that collagen fibers, they may form a band, they may form a band-like structure, or they may form a sheet-like structure. Sheet means, you know, bed sheets you use, isn't it? So bed sheet means a very thin, flat, extended structure, no, that is called as sheet, S-H-E-E-T, sheet. So if the connective tissue form a white sheet, then it is called as aponeurosis. And if the connective tissue they form a band-like structure, then that is called as tendon. Okay, a muscle may have a tendinous insertion or it may have a aponeurotic insertion. So for this ocular muscle, you should remember the ocular muscle always has aponeurotic insertion. That means the connective tissue of these muscles, which are derived from the endomysium, perimysium, okay, and epimysium. So those connective tissue, they will form a white sheet-like structure in case of ocular muscle. So they always have a aponeurotic insertion. Okay, so most of these muscles are flat band-like, and they will have a muscular part and a aponeurotic part. The muscular part is usually towards the point of origin, whereas the aponeurotic part, that is the white sheet-like connective tissue part, so that will be towards the point of insertion. That means, remember, all the ocular muscles, they have aponeurotic insertions, not tendinous insertions. Okay. Now coming to again, you see these 7 ocular muscles, as I told you, so they can be actually divided into 3 groups. Okay, that means the first group is made up of straight muscles. Then you have a second group which is made up of retractor muscle, and a third group that is made up of oblique muscle. That means the 7 muscles, for our convenience of discussion, we divide them into 3 groups. A group of straight muscle, then a retractor muscle, and a group of oblique muscles. So the straight muscles, if you see, they are 4 in number, whereas the retractor muscle, they are single, whereas the oblique muscles, they are 2 in number. Now these straight muscles, they can be named. Okay, the name of these straight muscles, or the straight muscles can be named based on their position in relation to the eyeball or based on their action on the eyeball. That means if you see the image here, so this is the right side eyeball. No, this is the left. We turn it that way. Lateral rectus. So this is the left side eyeball. So if you see here, the straight muscles, they are named as dorsal rectus, ventral rectus, medial rectus, and lateral rectus. So this name nomenclature of the straight muscle, the first one, dorsal, ventral, and medial. So this is based on their position. See, rectus means straight. Okay, try to remember, rectus means straight. So out of the 7 muscles, there are 4 straight muscles. Okay, one of that straight muscle is placed on the dorsal aspect of the eyeball, one on the ventral aspect of the eyeball, one on the medial aspect of the eyeball, and one on the lateral aspect of the eyeball. So based on their position, these straight muscles, we name them as dorsal rectus, ventral rectus, medial rectus, and lateral rectus. Okay, now what happened, you see, if this dorsal rectus, now this is dorsal rectus, so this muscle, no, levator palpebral superioris, so this is a muscle of the eyelid. So this is a palpebral muscle, it is shown here, but this is not a extrinsic muscle of the eyeball, rather this is a palpebral muscle. Okay, so if you see here, this is the dorsal rectus. Okay, my cursor is on its aponeurotic point of insertion. Now, if this dorsal rectus muscle contracts, then what will happen? The eyeball will get elevated, isn't it? The eyeball will turn upward. So if you want to keep your head in a fixed position, and if you want to look up, then which muscle will contract? The dorsal rectus will contract. If this dorsal rectus muscle, if it contracts, then the eyeball will turn upward. Okay, so that upward turning of the eyeball, so that is called as elevation of the eyeball or levator. So the muscle responsible for this upward turning, so that is called as levator oculi muscle. So dorsal rectus, based on their action, is called as levator oculi because it turns the eyeball upward. Okay, so opposite will be the case of the ventral rectus. So here you see this is the ventral rectus, the red one I have labeled there. So this ventral rectus, if you see, if this muscle contracts, then what will happen? The eyeball will turn downward. That is, the eyeball will get depressed. As a result, the ventral rectus is called as depressor oculi muscle. Similarly, the medial rectus, if it contracts, then the eyeball will turn towards the medial side, isn't it? So turning towards the medial side or turning towards the axis, it is called as adduction. Okay, that's why the medial rectus is called as adductor oculi muscle. Whereas if the lateral rectus contracts, if this lateral rectus contracts, then the eyeball will turn towards the external side, or it will turn away from the central axis. And as a result, the lateral rectus is called as abductor muscle. So now, if you have any confusion regarding adductor and abductor, you just remember it this way. Okay, if someone is kidnapped, then that person is brought towards his home or he is taken away from his home. Tell me. Away, isn't it? If someone takes you away, then if someone kidnaps you, then what we call? He has been abducted, isn't it? If someone is kidnapped, then what we call? So-and-so has been abducted by some terrorist or some antisocial element. We say that way, isn't it? So abductor means taking away. Okay, so if the lateral rectus, if it contracts, what will happen? The eyeball will move away from its central axis. The central axis of the body will be here on the medial side, isn't it? So if it contracts, then what will happen? The eyeball will move away from the central axis. So it will be a type of abduction. That's why we call it as abductor oculi. The opposite will be adductor or adduction. Adduction means bringing towards the central axis. Okay, so if this medial rectus it contracts, what will happen? The eyeball will move towards the medial axis. So it will be called as adductor muscles. Okay, that way you can remember. So the straight muscle, I repeat once again, they are named based on their position or they can be named based on their action. Okay, based on their position, dorsal, ventral, medial and lateral. And based on their action, they are called as levator, depressor, adductor and abductor muscles. In addition to that, regarding the straight muscle, we have to remember these straight muscles, all of them has the same point of origin. Okay, try to remember all these straight muscle will have same point of origin. That means they will arise from a single point. Okay, and from there they will diverge out and will get inserted in the respective part of the eyeball. Okay. So they have the same point of origin but have different point of insertion. If you see the dorsal rectus, where it is inserting? It is inserting on the dorsal aspect of the sclera. The medial rectus, if you see where it is inserting on the anterior dorsal aspect of the anterior medial aspect of the sclera. Similarly, the ventral rectus, where it is inserting on the anterior ventral aspect of the sclera. Okay, and the lateral rectus, if you see where it is inserting on the anterior or rostro-lateral aspect of the sclera. All are inserting on the sclera, but at different position of the sclera. But they all will have a single point of origin. That is, all these four rectus muscle, they arise around the optic foramen. Okay, from there, around the optic foramen, they will arise and they will just diverge out and will insert on the respective position of the sclera. Then comes the second group of muscle that is called the retractor muscle. So retractor muscle is single and the name is given based on its action. Okay, so this retractor muscle, basically we find it on the posterior aspect of the eyeball. Okay, and it helps in holding the eyeball inside the orbit. Okay, just to hold the eyeball. Inside the orbit, you have the retractor muscle. Retractor muscle will just hold the eyeball in position. Okay, it does not allow the eyeball. Suppose if you bend down, your eyeball doesn't come down, isn't it? It is held in position by a group of muscle. Because when we bend our head down like this, we look at the ground and gravity will try to pull our eye. Okay, but our eye doesn't bulge out or it doesn't come out. Why? Because you have a group or you have a muscle at the posterior aspect of the eyeball which will try to hold the muscle eyeball in position, and that muscle is called as the retractor oculi muscle. So the name is based on its action because it retracts the eyeball inside the orbit. Then you have the third group, which is called as the oblique muscles. The oblique muscles are 2 in number and they are named based on their position as dorsal oblique and ventral oblique. So if you see here, this is the dorsal oblique muscle and this is the ventral, the blue one. Okay, dorsal oblique and ventral oblique. So the name is mainly based on their position. Now coming to the retractor muscles. So retractor muscle, as I told you, they are single and it is called as the retractor oculi muscle. The name is based on their function and it is seen on the posterior aspect of the eyeball. Okay, and this retractor muscle, though it is a single muscle, but it is made up of 4 bands. Okay, it is made up of 4 bands, and these 4 bands, they will arise from the around the optic foramen. That means they will have their point of origin just near the optic foramen. Or you can say they will arise together with the straight muscle. So they have a common origin with the straight muscles. But these straight muscles and retractor muscles, they will alternate with each other. That means, suppose if you go on counting the muscles, no, then suppose you have dorsal rectus, then on the other side you will have lateral rectus. Okay, now if you see in this image, you have dorsal rectus here, then you have lateral rectus here. So between these 2 rectus, you have one band of retractor muscle. So this is the retractor muscle. So this is a band of retractor muscle. Similarly, here you have the lateral rectus. This is lateral rectus. And here you have ventral rectus. This is ventral rectus. So between them again, you have one band. Okay, you see, this is the optic foramen. So around the optic foramen, I told you 5 muscle will arise, 4 straight muscle and 1 retractor muscles. And this retractor muscle is in turn made up of 4 bands. Okay, they will have a common origin with the straight muscle, but these 4 bands of retractor muscle will alternate with the rectus muscles. That means between lateral rectus and medial dorsal rectus and lateral rectus, there will be one band. Between lateral and ventral, one band. Between ventral and medial, another band. Between medial and dorsal, again, there will be another band. Another characteristic of the retractor muscle is that they envelop the optic nerve. Okay, that means they encapsulate the optic nerve or they form a protective covering around the optic nerve. So here you can see this yellow structure. So that is the optic nerve. Okay, so to locate the optic nerve, actually you will have to reflect the retractor muscles. Without reflecting or without cutting the reflector muscle or retractor muscle, you cannot locate the optic nerve. So optic nerve will come out of the optic foramen. Around the optic foramen, you will have all these 5 muscles, okay, encircling the optic nerve. But as the optic nerve moves towards the eyeball, what will happen? The rectus muscle will get diverged out, but the retractor muscle will not diverge. They will just continue the optic nerve, or they will just continuously encapsulate the optic nerve. Okay, so their main what they does, they envelop the optic nerve and they insert on the posterior aspect of the sclera. So what this, you see this white structure, this is the sclera, this is cornea. Okay, so on the anterior aspect of the sclera, you will have cornea. On the posterior aspect of the sclera, you will have the opening for the optic nerve. Optic papilla will be there, and around that optic papilla, these retractor muscles will insert. Okay, so they insert on the posterior aspect of the sclera. Then the oblique muscles, they are 2 in number, and they are named as dorsal or superior oblique, ventral or inferior oblique. And this nomenclature of the oblique muscle is mainly based on their position. Okay, and regarding the oblique muscle, you have to know they have different point of origin, they have different point of insertion, and their course is also different. They do not have a similar type of course, because you see the rectus muscle, if you see, or the retractor muscle you see, they will have same point of origin and their course is not exactly same but almost similar. But for the oblique muscles, their origin, course, and insertion are completely different. Okay. Now, if you see here, this is the red one. This is the dorsal oblique muscle, and here this red one is the ventral oblique muscle. So, other are the retractor and the rectus muscles. So now let us discuss the muscles one by one. So this is very, very important from examination point of view. The different ocular muscles, you have to remember them with their point of origin, insertion, and action. Okay, the first ocular muscle that I'm going to discuss is the dorsal or superior rectus or levator oculi muscle. So the first two names, dorsal or superior, this is based on position. Levator oculi is based on its action or function. Okay, so here this red one. So this is the dorsal oblique muscle. Okay, so the origin of the muscle, you see, it is around the optic foramen. So if you trace this muscle here, so from where it is coming from around the optic foramen. So remember, the origin is around the optic foramen. So its course, if you see, after its origin, this dorsal rectus muscle, it diverges outward. It diverges outward, upward, and forward. That means from here, it is originating and it is diverging out. You see, all the muscles are bundled up here near the optic foramen, and from there they diverges out. So from its origin, the dorsal rectus will diverge upward and forward. Upward means it is dorsal rectus, so it will go upward, and also it will go forward. So from its origin, it diverges upward and forward, and where it will get inserted, it will insert on the dorso-rostral part of sclera. Dorso means upper part, rostral means anterior part. Okay, so it will diverge upward and forward and will insert on the dorso-rostral. Rostral means anterior. Okay, so if you have confusion, you can just write it as anterior. Okay. Dorso means upper, rostral means anterior. So it will insert on the dorso-rostral part here. Dorso means upward and anterior part of the sclera. It will insert. And what is the action? As I have told you, it elevates or turns the eyeball upwards. See, this is the fixed point. This is the movable point. So if this muscle contracts, the eyeball, what will happen? It will just turn upward, isn't it? So it turns the eyeball upward, or it elevates the eyeball. So that is regarding the dorsal rectus. The ventral rectus, you see again, its origin, if you see again, it is around the optic foramen. I told you in the very beginning, like all the rectus muscles will have same point of origin, and that point of origin is around the optic foramen. So here, this is the ventral rectus. Again, if you see this muscle, where from it is arising, around the optic foramen, and where it is inserting on the ventrorostral part of the sclera. That means on the ventral and anterior part of the sclera. Okay, the course, if you see again, from its origin, this muscle will diverge. This one was diverged, dorsal was diverging upward, so the ventral will be diverging downward. So it will diverge downward and forward. Okay. Then action, if you see, what is the action? It depresses or turns the eyeball downward. So if you see, this is origin again, fixed point. This is movable point, insertion. If this muscle contracts, the eyeball will be turned downward. Okay, so that is called as depression. So it will depress the eyeball. Then comes the lateral rectus. So if you see here, this red one, so this is lateral rectus. Again, the point of origin is around the optic foramen. Okay, and insertion is where? It is on the laterorostral. That means lateral and anterior part of the sclera. Okay, and the function, as I told you, what will happen? It will move the eyeball away from the central axis. So it will abduct. It will abduct the eyeball, or it will turn the eyeball outward. Okay, course again, if you see, it will diverge outward and forward. Okay, I have not written here, just you can write it on your own. Its course is, it diverges outward and forward. The medial rectus, it is not seen here. The medial rectus will be opposite to the lateral rectus. Again, the origin is around the optic foramen. Insertion is where? On the mediorostral part of the sclera. Almost similar, all these muscles, only their course is different and their action is different. And their action is what? Adducts. It adducts the eyeball, or it turns the eyeball inward. Okay, so that was regarding the rectus muscle or straight muscles. Then comes the retractor oculi muscles. The retractor oculi muscles, the red one, you can see two bands of retractor oculi muscle here. This is one band, this is another one. So it is actually made up of 4 bands. Two can be seen, two will be seen on the other side. You can see the ventral band and the medial band is not seen here. So 2 bands you can see here. So, but it is made up of how many bands? 4 bands are there, 2 more on the opposite side. Then I have told already, it alternates with the rectus muscle and it envelopes the optic nerve. So this we have already discussed. So around, again, origin, if you see, it is around the optic foramen. So the 4 rectus muscle and retractor muscle, 5 muscles will arise around the optic foramen. Whereas insertion, if you see where it is inserted on the posterior or caudal aspect of the sclera. You see, this white structure is sclera, so this is the posterior part of the sclera. So around the posterior part of the sclera, this muscle will insert. Okay, and the point of insertion is not so, what you say, the aponeurotic part is not so large actually. For the rectus muscle, the aponeurotic part is very large. Whereas for the other muscle, the aponeurotic part is not so large. Then comes the oblique muscles. So the oblique muscle 2 are there. One is dorsal oblique and the other one is ventral oblique. Now if you see the dorsal oblique origin is different. You see where from it arises around the ethmoidal foramen. Now look at this skull. Okay, so here this is the pterygoid crest. Behind the pterygoid crest, foramen ovale, in front of the orbitorotendum, in front of orbitorotendum, optic nerve, optic foramen. So from here, 5 muscle will arise, the 4 rectus muscle and the retractor muscle. Whereas around the ethmoidal foramen, from here 1 muscle will arise, and that muscle is what? The superior or the dorsal oblique. So try to remember the point of origin of superior or dorsal oblique. It is around the ethmoidal foramen. Okay, then one more thing you have to remember regarding the dorsal or superior oblique is that the course of this muscle is interrupted. That means it has an interrupted course. That means from its origin, the dorsal or superior rectus from its origin will move forward along the dorsal aspect of the eyeball. It will move forward along the dorsal aspect of the eyeball. Okay, and when it reaches the level of the supraorbital process. So if you see here, this is the supraorbital process. So when it reaches the level of supraorbital process, this muscle, which was actually going forward this way, will now reflect around a hyaline cartilage, and that hyaline cartilage is called as trochlea. Trochlea, I think all of you know, trochlea means what? A pulley-like structure is called as trochlea. Okay, so if you see here, this is the dorsal oblique muscle, this is the point of insertion. If you trace back here, you see here, this is the point of reflection. That means you have a hyaline cartilage, and that hyaline cartilage is called as trochlea. So this trochlea is around the supraorbital process. Okay, now what happened? The origin will be somewhere here. The ethmoidal, this is optic foramen, so ethmoidal foramen will be somewhere here. From here it will arise and it will go forward this way, not seen here. Then here around the trochlea it will reflect. Okay, then it will turn forward and outward. Okay, it will turn forward and outward and will insert between the dorsal rectus and the lateral rectus. If you see, this muscle is dorsal rectus, this is the lateral rectus. So on the sclera, between the dorsal rectus and lateral rectus, it will insert. Okay, it has its origin here. From here, it will go forward along the medial wall of the orbit. Okay, then around the supraorbital process, it will reflect along, it will reflect over the trochlea, that is the pulley-like structure. Then it will turn forward and outward and will move below the dorsal rectus. This is dorsal rectus, it will move below the dorsal rectus or beneath the dorsal rectus and will insert on the sclera between the dorsal and lateral rectus. Okay, so the point of insertion is where? It is point of insertion is between the dorsal and lateral rectus. Okay, then what is the function? If this muscle contracts, what will happen? The eyeball will get elevated. That means it will turn little upward, and also it will rotate. Okay, so it helps in elevation and also in the rotation of the eyeball. That means if this muscle contracts, the eyeball will rotate in this direction. This way it will rotate. Okay, it will rotate in this direction, and also to some extent it will get elevated. So it has two functions. It elevates and also rotates the eyeball. So that is about the dorsal oblique muscle. Okay, you see the nerve supply, the cranial nerves has been taught to you or not? Please tell me, cranial nerves.
Yes, sir.
Okay, what is the name of the fourth cranial nerve? Fourth cranial nerve? Nerve supply. Okay, it is your assignment. You just see the nerve supply to the cranial nerve, then you find out the nerve which supplies. There is one nerve, cranial nerve, which will only supply one muscle, and that muscle is the superior oblique muscle. You please find out the cranial nerve which will supply the superior oblique muscle. Okay, and if you find the name, then you will know why that nerve has a particular name. You just remember this trochlea, the cartilage here, it is called as trochlea. Okay, so why the nerve is called as nerve has a particular name, you will understand by remembering the name of this cartilage. Okay, so that is your assignment. Assignment means what? You just check the notes that sir has given you, you'll find it. Okay, then comes the last ocular muscle, that is the ventral oblique muscle. So regarding the ventral oblique muscle, you remember the ventral oblique muscle, it is entirely muscular. It is short and thick. Okay, I told you in the very beginning, most of the extrinsic muscle of the eyeball are band-like, and they have a muscular part and a aponeurotic part. Okay, but I did not say all, I said most. Why I said most? Because there are exceptions. And what is the exception? The exception is the ventral or inferior oblique. So the ventral or inferior oblique muscle, it is entirely muscular. It is short and thick. So there is no aponeurotic part, but there will be a small connective tissue part which will insert on the sclera. Okay, you see all the muscles, they will origin, and they will at their point of origin and insertion, all muscles will have connective tissue. Okay, through their connective tissue, the muscles originate and insert. Okay, and that connective tissue may be band-like or it may be sheath-like. If it is sheath-like, it is aponeurotic. If it is band-like, it is tendon. But in addition to that, at some time it may not resemble a sheath or a band, but it may be in the form of a small layer of connective tissue. So such type of insertion is seen in case of ventral oblique muscle. So the origin of this ventral oblique muscle, if you see, it is in a depression behind the lacrimal fossa. Again, you see in this skull here, this image. So this is the lacrimal fossa I told you. Okay, so at the base of the lacrimal fossa, there will be one foramen. Just behind that foramen, okay, the part of the lacrimal fossa just behind that foramen, that is the posterior opening of the nasolacrimal duct. Behind the posterior opening of the nasolacrimal duct, that area will give rise to the ventral oblique muscle. So you remember the ventral oblique muscle will arise from this point. Okay, so the point just behind the lacrimal fossa. From there, it will arise and it will curve along the ventral rectus and will insert on the sclera partly beneath the lateral rectus. So that you can see here in this image, if you see. You see here, this point, this is the point of origin of the ventral rectus. Okay, and where from it is originating? Just behind the lacrimal fossa. So this is the area of lacrimal fossa. Just behind it is originating. Then after its origin, this muscle will curve along the ventral rectus. If you see, this muscle is ventral rectus. This is ventral rectus muscle. Okay. So here this is ventral rectus. So from its origin, it will curve along the ventral rectus muscle and will insert on the sclera partly beneath the lateral rectus. This is lateral rectus, just beneath the lateral rectus it is inserting. Okay, its course is, so this muscle is completely muscular, short and thick. Origin is behind the lacrimal fossa. Okay, course, if you see, it curves along the eyeball and the ventral rectus muscle and inserts on the sclera beneath the lateral rectus. So if you remember this course, then you can easily remember its action. Its action is what? If this muscle contracts, the eye to some extent will get depressed. That means it will get turned downward, and also it will rotate, or it will move. It will draw the eyeball inward, or you can say it will rotate and also depress the eyeball. So that is about the ocular muscles. Okay, so this chapter is very, very important from examination point of view. Please remember the name of all the ocular muscles, their origin, insertion, and action. Clear? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dana.
Yes, sir.
Thanks
Yes,
for
sir.
attending that. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.